Okay, so welcome back. Today what I'm actually going to do is talk about the Lenovo X1 Extreme Generation 5. And believe it or not, for me anyways, it's hard to believe that this laptop, which I'm pointing at, the X1 Extreme Generation 1, I bought it like 3 years ago and we're already on Generation 5 of it. So it's good that Lenovo has consistently updated this darn thing, but really what I wanted to do was kind of take a look at the specs to see if maybe it is actually worth upgrading if you are already, an owner of one of the X1 Extremes, especially if you were a 4th gen owner, so you would have just gotten it probably like last year. And now that the new one is out, is it worth going to the new one to try to get some of those, whatever the advantages that might be out there, depending on what they changed. So that's what I'm going to talk about. What I actually did is I'm going to compare the Gen 4 to the Gen 5 just so you can kind of see what changed versus any other laptop. A lot of times I'll either compare the same sort of laptops, different generations. Sometimes I'll compare different models like the P1 or the T15G, but because those haven't been updated yet, they're not going to be included in today's comparison. But whenever I do get the upgraded information, or I should say when the upgraded models come out and I get their information, I will do a comparison. As far as the specs are concerned, I actually pulled them off the Lenovo website, not from a performance spec reference sheet because I could not find one yet. My assumption is they're not out, but when they do come out, I'll update accordingly. So jumping right over to my spreadsheet, we're going to start at the very top here, and I'm going to have to scroll back up. First thing that happened is, of course, you're going to have new processors, right? So now we're going to be in the 12th generation processor. That's all they give on the website right now. I would like to believe that the choices are going to be very similar to the Gen 4, where you'll have at least 3 choices of which processors you want to choose from, and they'll probably be i7s and i9s. And then the next thing we're going to talk about that changed, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but the things that have changed are going to be in red on the laptop so you can see. And I will have bolded the majority of it. Some of the things that didn't change, I maybe made it all red, and then the thing that actually changed was bolded. So when we get to that, it kind of like sticks out. I don't forget to talk about it. But moving to the operating system, now they're offering Windows 11 Home and Pro, and then they're also going to offer you downgrade rights to Windows 10 Pro. So if you have Home 11, or I should say if you have Windows 11 Pro, you can downgrade to Windows 10 Pro. And the main reason is because Pro actually costs more than Home. So you're not going to be able to go from 11 Home down to 10 Pro. Just saying. So something to keep in mind. One of the things that also changed that it's kind of a bummer, you can no longer get Linux or Ubuntu, and there isn't an option for no operating system. But once again, it might not be correct. So maybe when they do upgrade or they offer the performance spec reference sheet or this thing starts shipping, those may show up as an option. All right, what's next? So to me, this is probably going to be the biggest deal to most folks. And that's going to be the selection of screens. So they have a lot of screens that are the same, the 4K screens, the touch, non-touch IPS screens. But then there is a screen that they added that's a 2K screen that has a 165 megahertz refresh rate. So rejoice, all gamers. And frankly, I think that's exactly who they're targeting with this. I mean, granted, if you do use it for something else that has, fast motion and you want to be able to keep up, yes, it's good to have that higher refresh rate, and it's in a 2K screen, so that's actually pretty awesome. Me personally, not a huge fan of 4K screens, even in a 16-inch. I would be happy with the 2K screen, and especially with that high refresh rate since I do game on my laptop. And then you also get the option to get an HD screen, which I still like HD screens for 15 and 16-inch laptops. And this HD screen is actually going to be offered with, of course, IPS and 300 nit. So it's not as bright as that 2K or definitely those 600 nit 4K screens, but still it's a decent choice. Now, I do believe that with the change in the display, it's going to alter the dimensions, and we'll get to that shortly. Moving to the graphics, it didn't seem like anything changed with the graphics card, so if you were expecting something to change, sorry to burst your bubble, but yeah, I think it's pretty much the exact same as the previous generation. The camera didn't really change a whole heck of a lot, but another big deal, but depending on who you are, Memory now is going to be DDR4, so therefore you get that 4800 megahertz clock speed. So that's pretty cool. Now that memory is going to be pretty pricey compared to your DDR4, but you know, memory comes down because once again, more people start using it, especially DDR4 becomes more available. So no big deal. Then the other bigger deal to me was the 8 terabytes of total space in this laptop. Finally, long overdue. I mean, if you shoot anything in 4K, you know what I'm talking about. Or if you have a lot of games or programs, you know, that space runs out. So movies runs out very fast. So it's good that now we can get up to 8 terabytes total in the system. Now you only still have 2 NVMe slots. So, you know, once again, you kind of got to remember that. And it's going to still be pricey right now because really those things are not cheap. Let's see. The battery did not change. Audio, they did mention Dolby Voice now, but I was pretty certain they had Dolby Voice the last time. I'm not 100% certain on that. But yeah, I didn't think that was a change. I just thought for some reason they decided to mention it for this particular model. Security, however, did change. And the thing about security, I didn't even know this was coming, but to me this is a big deal because that's one thing I don't mind it with my model. But so the power button and the fingerprint reader are now integrated, so they're the same thing. You touch it or you hold it to turn it on, or to unlock it you just touch it. And I think that's a really great idea. To me, it just makes a lot of sense. And it's amazing that it kind of took them this long to get to this point because they have these readers on like all their other devices. But I'm hoping that this actually now becomes a ThinkPad standard because it is really, really smart. And I'll put up a graphic just to kind of show you what that looks like. It mentioned that it's also tile ready and then glance with privacy alert. So because at first I didn't really know what that meant, but when I started kind of looking at some of the other text, basically it made it seem like what they're talking about is being able to use facial recognition to access your system. So if you want to unlock your system like your phone, you can just look at it. I personally don't use that for security reasons, but you know, hey, it's a perk. You know, it's something that if you want to use it, you can. It's there. Let's see. What is next there? The ports and the slots look to be the same. Like I said, as far as the dimensions are concerned, when we get to that did change slightly because of the screen, but it didn't add any space for ports. Connectivity appears to be exactly the same as well. Now, getting into the dimensions, it is slightly thicker. So now instead of being the 17 point, or was it the non-touch model, was 17.7 millimeters thick. And the dimensions for really this is good. It says starting at on the website right now. It doesn't necessarily specify which model they're talking about, but the assumption is the starting at is the non-touch because the non-touch is going to be the one that's going to be thinner and it's going to be lighter. So therefore, that's probably what we're referencing when we're talking about the 17.9 millimeters. So just a little bit thicker, and it's going to be a little bit heavier. So now you're going to get up to starting at 14.14 pounds. And then finally, getting to the keyboard, there is now an air intake. The air intake, I was like, don't pretty much every ThinkPad, at least that I've owned, they've had some sort of air intake. So I don't really know exactly what they're getting at with that and why they list it here. But it's there. I'm thinking it's just vents. I don't think they're actually talking about the cooling bay, but I really don't know. The control keys, F9 through 11, I actually think that was the same. They listed it on this. They didn't list it on the F or the Gen 4, so I put it up here. And then the price. The price has yet to be mentioned, but the assumption is it's going to go up. I mean, that's how this thing works. In case you're new to this, anytime a laptop replaces another laptop, meaning they're a newer generation, I haven't in my 40-something odd years ever see them go down in price. They've always gone up in price. I don't think this is going to be any exception, but where does it go up to? Previously, the Gen 4 started at $1,907. So it's going to be somewhere in that ballpark. I'm thinking with the inclusion of, the more expensive memory now, and then those processors, that right there is going to kind of dictate that the price is more. And then you can kind of decide, which screen you want, because that's going to course, drive the price as well as the other options. But I'm just saying the reason why the starting price is because there's certain things that's on this laptop that the Gen 4 just did not have, right? So you can't even get some of the Gen 4, like you can't get DDR4 on this laptop. You're going to have DDR5 in this laptop. So that's going to drive the price up. You can't get an 11th generation Intel processor. You're only going to have an 11th or 12th generation, unless they do something extreme like do an i5, which I highly doubt they do that because that just makes no sense. But yeah, so it's probably going to go up. I don't know what it's going to go up to, maybe $2,000 or so. I probably could go back and look at the previous ones to see what they went up by, but I mean, you can't really account for inflation and a lot of the other things that they actually take into account when they set these prices. So that's all I have. Seems like it's going to be a pretty decent laptop. Like I said, it does have some things that I actually really, really like. They probably aren't grounds for me to want to jump right now and pick this thing up, but it's good to know that they're there. So when I do, man, I got to bump this ISO back down. Bear with me. Okay, so yeah, it's good to know that these things are going to be available going forward on the X1 Extreme as well as the P1, and hopefully the T15G gets some of these as well. So yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free, leave them in the below in the comment section. Click like, subscribe, and Agent Fitz signing out.